This episode is being brought to you by Healthy Women and the Allergen Foundation. For more information, visit healthywomen.org. Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sibylla Muti. Great Girlfriends, you are in for a treat today because I have partnered with Healthy Women to bring to life stories in medicine, humans in medicine, physicians, and real life stories of people who have had experiences of journeys that we're on in women's health and breast cancer and migraines and different topics that we're talking about in our circles. And so it's always very fun for me to be able to have a real life conversation with a doctor who also shares the experiences that we share as women, not just from a data standpoint, but actually living out her own very personal patient story. So today, great girlfriends, I have on the show Dr. Lisa Larkin. Hey, Dr. Lisa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Even in our pre-recording conversation where we're just getting to know one another, I feel the human woman, great girlfriend side of you alive and well. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to have you here. We talk about health personally. We talk about what we know and hear and read online. We study it from a very much from a patient perspective, but it's very rare that we get to have a conversation with a doctor who has gone on a personal journey and understands firsthand what our experiences are like. So for me, having you here, Dr. Lisa, is going to help transform some of those living room conversations that our great girlfriends are having about medicine and women's health.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I would love if you could share a little bit of that really super sweet bio that I read earlier. Just give us a bit about who you are.
I describe myself as a woman's health internist. So, I'm a physician who is trained, board certified in internal medicine, but I've been really focused my entire professional career on women's health, women's primary care, and have practiced both in private practice and academics for more than 30 years in Cincinnati, Ohio. Along that journey, I've become a patient in the last 5 years, and I think that's what we're going to talk about today. So I am now a midlife woman, breast cancer survivor with menopause and all kinds of other postmenopausal and cancer survivor health issues, which really flavor what I do now in what I call the last segment of my career. I really launched now a second part of my career, a women's health startup called Ms. Medicine, with really the focus to advance gender-specific women's primary care, to raise the standard of care of women's health in a very specific way. And that's kind of my mission now as a cancer survivor and a women's health internist for this last, what I hope is 10 good years plus of my career.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. I love that. So as a doctor, spending time in the in the patient seat, I'd love to know a little bit, as much as you're able to share with us, about your story, your journey, your experience with breast cancer, and what that journey, where it took you, because I'm sure life transformed for you in many different ways.
Right, many, many different ways. And I can tell you, certainly as an internist for 25 years prior to my own cancer diagnosis, right, you certainly hear stories, and I heard stories from patients all the time that there were unexpected gifts that came out of a cancer diagnosis. And I can even tell you as a physician, you don't really understand that when you're not a cancer survivor. And I can tell you that that is absolutely true. And although I don't wish for anyone to have cancer. And I certainly, in a perfect world, I wish I am not a cancer survivor either.
Mm-hmm.
But there really were incredible unexpected gifts that came out of it, including just really this profound gratitude for my girlfriends who, family and friends, but, girlfriends in the setting of my own cancer diagnosis came out of the woodwork. And I will tell you, it was one of those times in my life where I was never so genuinely grateful for, the gift of friendship. And I never felt more loved than I did during my own cancer journey. I have incredible friends, and they really rose to the occasion to support me in a way that you don't really appreciate or realize until it happens to you.
Mm. Wow. I can say my mom went through that same experience, and her great girlfriends were the center point of her healing journey because they did so many small things to just lift the burden of the experience for her and remind her that the hope that she felt in her heart was useful and that it things would work out in her favor. So early in, you get this diagnosis, Dr. Lisa. How old were you and what was that like for you?
Right. I was just turning 50. It was a huge, milestone birthday.
Mhm,
I actually was in the middle of a divorce
mhm.
at the same time, and it was a big year, let's say. I had been practicing in Cincinnati for a long time. I had recently left private practice and had sold my practice actually, and had rejoined our large academic health center here in Cincinnati, and was launching a big multi-specialty women's center there, and in the middle of a divorce and then a breast cancer diagnosis. And it was a very large pivotal point in my life. In fact, I look back now and it's very clear that there's pre-cancer diagnosis and post-cancer diagnosis, and kind of all of the things that have happened. And basically the personal and emotional growth that I think I did, and really having a completely new perspective on kind of life, relationships, family, friendship, what I really wanted to do professionally, all has really changed and shifted in to a large extent since that cancer diagnosis. But
Wow.
it's a huge thing. I did not have an insignificant tumor. My tumor was relatively large. I had to have really pretty aggressive treatment and multiple surgeries, and was trying to work all through chemotherapy and radiation therapy and multiple surgeries, and juggling, again, going through a divorce and
My
a big
goodness.
job, and
Mhm,
pretty aggressive treatment. And I will tell you again, it changes perspective in a lot of very profound ways.
mhm,
I had been doing, taking care of breast cancer patients and, menopausal patients and healthy aging, and, all that I do as a women's health internist for many, many years. But again, the transition to being a patient myself and, living through the whole experience certainly gives me a new lens through which I talk to patients. And it's actually been really now an area of focus now for me, really, to do a lot of help with people who are actively going through breast cancer and who are breast cancer survivors. Because certainly I say when I lecture all the time, I'm living my own patient population now, right? I'm exactly the
mm,
kind of patient that I take care of in practice, and have a lot of professional and very personal experiences with being a patient.
yeah. So you mentioned something very important because again, I've learned a lot just being the friend of people who have gone through this experience, and one of my learnings was that life doesn't stop. Somewhere in my mind, I thought that there was a pause button.
Right.
And that I really did. And this was the naive side of me thinking, there's got to be some kind of pause button. Surely there's time from work. Surely you don't have to go to work and do chemo in the same day. Surely people are pardoning you in different areas of your career, and expectations are a bit different, and that there's grace. And I quickly learned that none of that's true, and that, the human demands that were on you before are still there, and it's really
Right.
up to each person to sort of make adjustments. But women are figuring out the how do I make, what are the compromises, or what is some of the cost of the adjustments I make if I do have to take time from work, and or do care for a family. And like you said, you were going through a whole divorce. In itself
Right.
is a separate you know
Yes.
oh my
Well,
goodness.
but I mean, you will laugh. I'm now very happily remarried, and have and truthfully, my now husband is the gift that also came out of my breast cancer diagnosis in a very
Wow.
really amazing story and very unusual way.
Uh-huh.
But I have 4 stepchildren, and in addition to my own 2 children, and
Wow.
they just roll their eyes because I say all the time, my favorite line is, life is really a complicated journey, and it's bumpy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Mm-hmm.
linear for any of us, and anyone who thinks that they're going to escape life without some significant bumps along the way is not really living in a reality, I don't think, because it's bumpy for everybody and complicated. And certainly having a cancer diagnosis and going through a divorce at the same time with a very high powered job was um, a lot. One of the things I would tell you, though, is one of the other things that I learned very clearly during my illness and when I was getting treatment is I was not a really great patient. I will tell you, I did not like being at home on my couch feeling lousy. What I
Mm-hmm.
realized was part of who I am and what I want to be remembered by, and my own identity really is tied up in being a doctor. I mean, I really
Mm-hmm.
missed my patients. My patients were the other group that were just unbelievably supportive in really just incredible ways. I can tell you, I got more cards, really meaningful letters and cards from patients that were just incredible. And it really made me appreciate not just my friends and my
Mm-hmm.
family, but my patients, and my ability to, be a physician is really a privilege. And I missed that very much. And so part of that balance that you're describing, right, life doesn't stop, and it didn't stop, and I certainly had responsibilities, but also part of who I am as being a doctor, and I missed that part too. And it's not so great being a patient. You really, there's part of you that you want to escape that too. So sometimes being busy with other things other than being a patient is really a gift as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. And I think, one of the things that one of my friends talked to me about that I learned was that, she didn't really want to share it with people. Even having to share that kind of news and deal with the emotional reactions of other people and how that sort of imposes on, the patient kind of complicates things for the patient. And so was that some of your experience? Like, how do I break this
Oh,
to
so can I
people? And
just tell you? So this was, I mean, really, this is the life is complicated part, right? So I was very private about the fact that I was in the middle of a divorce. In fact, very few people knew. I
Mhm.
was not living with my husband at the time. I was in a completely separate house. But I really, I was in a very high powered job, and really was uncomfortable kind of with the baggage or the conversations I would have to have at work about being in the middle of a
Mhm.
divorce. And I really kept that secret.
Mhm.
When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and really as a physician, I'm suddenly out of work, I have a large patient population, like I had to tell people. There was just no way. And what started to happen was I was getting cards and flowers and food sent to my husband's house,
Oh
not my
boy.
house. And so suddenly then, not only was I now dealing with people coming to me with the breast cancer diagnosis, but also I was having to discuss the fact that I was in the middle of a divorce at the same time.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was this unraveling of kind of this persona of everything kind of being okay to suddenly being this person where lots of things were really not okay. I was
Yeah.
very human, and that actually was, I think, the first really point in my life, and why it is so significant that I had this incredible sense of feeling very supported and very loved. And I had
Mm.
amazing people come out of the woodwork, but it did require having those difficult conversations and wishing that I could kind of hide and make it all go away, and not really being able to do that at that particular time.
Yeah. We'll be right back after these messages. Great girlfriends, you're invited to join us at Exhale, a virtual day oasis, a retreat experience for you. I've partnered with The Colored Girl to bring to you a day of self-care, soul care, and sisterhood. Join us August 29th from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Featured speakers include Holly Robinson Pete, Koya Webb, Dr. Sanaa Jaman, Yolanda Frederick, Kayla Walker, Ty Beauchamp, Angela Holton, KJ Rose, Dr. Zanya Mitchell, and many, many more. Reserve your spot at bit.ly/SummerExhale. I cannot wait to see you there. And now back to the episode. You know, as women, we're so strong. We do so much. We carry so many titles, and vulnerability can be very complicated for people,
Yep.
specifically. And I think it even becomes more complex when there's fear, when fear intersects with vulnerability. So, you know, we can be vulnerable and share exciting news sometimes, and that's uncomfortable. But what about when we're afraid and when, you know, we're facing very complex life decisions? Vulnerability makes us often want to just hide out and tuck and hide. And what are some of the things that you learned about, you know, that sort of effect on your mental health or your emotional health, the hiding
Well,
of it?
right. And I mean, right. I will. So there's lots to this story, but it was complicated, right? So, I have taken care of over many years, breast cancer, women who have had breast cancer who have survived and done well. And I have taken care of women who have had breast cancer who have died. And I have been with them at the very end stages of their life. I have many stories of, women who I have shared the journey as they have passed away. And so then, having, this diagnosis, of course, hits home very clearly, right? Because, my
Mm-hmm.
tumor was not small. I had extensive disease. I needed treatment. I know the statistics all too well, right? It
Mm-hmm.
suddenly makes the future and what's going to happen very, very uncertain. Not that it's not always uncertain for all of us. We never know what tomorrow's going to bring, but this is very much in your face, which is not only do I know as a patient and as a doctor, I've got a rough year of therapy to go through
Mm.
between chemotherapy and radiation, but really the frailty of life and the uncertainty of the future is really thrown right at you, right? And
Mhm.
it really, and that is truthfully, although it was terrifying, and there's still great uncertainty, right? As any cancer survivor knows, particularly with breast cancer, there's no guarantee at any point that it won't come back. The likelihood that you have recurrent disease gets lower the further that you get out, with the
Mm.
type of estrogen receptor positive cancer that I had, but it's never zero, right? So you're never
Mhm.
really feeling like you're completely free from thinking about the disease. And so, that lens of really being mindful and thoughtful about what years you have left, what time you have left, what's important to you, what you want to do. For me, it was really about, what's important to me personally, what's important to me professionally, really asking some really hard questions. How do I want to really live the rest of my life going forward, is the first thing that happens. But then truthfully, the fear of all of the things that happens with chemotherapy and surgery and the real things that all of my patients experience, right? it's
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
huge change in your body image. It was chemotherapy induced menopause for me. It was
Mm.
hair loss, it's skin changes, it's
Mhm.
change in fat distribution, it's saggy skin, it's rapid aging, it's feeling terrible, it's sexual dysfunction, it's just hot flare. There's just, the list of side effects from therapy is huge. And I knew all of those side effects, right? Because I've been treating patients for 25 years that have all
Mhm.
of these side effects in my practice. And, so I know what I knew going into it, what I was really, looking forward to. And there's fear, uncertainty, a lot of emotional baggage that comes with all of that. And I will tell you truthfully, my friends now laugh about the conversation that we had, is as my girlfriends were driving me to the airport to go for my consultation in New York from Cincinnati, I was bemoaning, like, can you believe this? I'm now 50 and I'm in the middle of a divorce and now I'm going to be bald and menopausal and have sexual dysfunction. And like, this is pretty dismal. Like, I'm not really sure who's going to date me anymore. Like, I don't know what the future holds here, but this is looking pretty grim, right?
Wow.
And all of those very, very
real and raw. Yeah.
raw. I mean, right. Like, it's like
Yeah.
real. Well, they will, you'll laugh, but prior to going on that consult, I had had a cup of coffee with um, uh, the person who's now my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I had our first kind of date, not even really a date. He cooked me breakfast several weeks after I got back from my mastectomies and my surgery, as this, first date really that we had, in
Wow.
my cancer journey. And,
Uh-huh.
now we've gotten married, but
I
still
love him.
yeah, no. Oh, you should love him. My husband is the bomb. No question.
Oh my gosh.
He is my gift from heaven for sure.
Oh my
And
gosh. I
and
love that.
certainly the unexpected gift from having breast cancer. And yeah, I mean, in the beginning of our dating relationship, I kept saying, you're a really nice, smart, great guy. And like, you're dating a bald woman with breast cancer going through chemotherapy. Like, I'm sure that you would have more fun with somebody else, but he's been
Oh
my
my
rock.
goodness.
So, yeah,
Wow, that's fantastic.
yeah,
That is one of the greatest stories I've heard of hope.
yeah,
And, even that gives you something to look forward to. It gives you something to work for. It gives you, positive anticipation for the future. Because you talked about, which I was going to ask you, what were some of the questions that you were asking yourself along the way? I mean, you were saying you have children and a big practice and just a lot of life happening. And so, the questions become different, I'm sure, than the questions you asked before the diagnosis. And I'm just curious some of that, but you were saying, life looks different and how do you make those adjustments? What were some of the other questions that you were asking yourself? I think one got answered about will I have love again? Maybe that was
yeah.
a
Well, that for sure. I mean, that it really was one of these things. Like, okay, I was really deep in the middle of my divorce, right? And
Mhm.
it was complicated.
Mhm.
And you never know. And I have lots of 50-year-old patients who, have been divorced or are divorced. And, there's no question. I always used to laugh and say, a 50-year-old man who's smart and, whatever, has a job or whatever, has lots of opportunities to
Mhm.
date. I'm not so sure that 50-year-old women, and, then here I am in the middle of about to lose my hair and get chemotherapy and be kind of a mess for a year. That really
Mhm.
was looking very grim. And certainly that was front and center, which is, what are those last years going to look like for my life? But I think
Mhm.
the other thing really was about professionally,
Mhm.
which is, what really is important to me professionally. As I told you, I really missed being a patient, but through the course of my career as a women's health internist, what has been so clear to me over time in multiple arenas has been really the gender bias in medicine, and
Mm.
really the lack of equivalent women's health care compared to men's care, and focus and research. And I mean, I could give you all kinds of statistics and things, that because I lecture about this all the time, but
Mhm.
that, women, particularly midlife women, really, that there's huge gaps in care that women just aren't getting. And then as a patient, I'm living my exact patient population that I've been working so hard to, really hopefully advance
Mhm.
care. And with the diagnosis and kind of my own journey and experience, it really became clear to me that, again, this last segment of my career, that I really want to try to make a difference in terms of, advancing care of women. Hence, starting this startup company that I have now as well. But really being focused about that, realizing kind of with this lens that, I don't know what the future is, and, it's kind of now or never. And if I want this to be my professional legacy, or, really try to give back and make an impact in some way, like, it's now or never. And I really need to try to do that. And that's honestly been one of the other things, silver linings that's come out of this, right? Because with that lens, it gave me the ability, frankly, to, resign from the position that I was in, and really make a big career move to do something different. I had kind of the wherewithal to do that, I think, because of this new lens with the
Mm-hmm.
cancer diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting because, I can't imagine switching seats. I really can't. You know, I can't imagine sitting on the other side. And sitting on the other side, do you lean into your own colleagues? Are you looking for leading researchers? What becomes your scope of care? I mean, you having the data have to then trust other people to make really cognitive decisions for your life, and switching seats I just cannot imagine that.
Yeah. Um, again, as you can probably imagine, as an internist, I'm a little bit OCD, and I tend to be
Mm-hmm.
kind of a control freak and all this kind of stuff. So, being vulnerable and being a patient and letting someone
Yeah.
else take care of me, is not something I've always done very well,
Yeah.
clearly. And there was a bunch of that I learned, and I did have to do, and I ultimately did. I mean, I am blessed to have many. I mean, having been practicing in the women's health space for a long time, I am blessed to know and have colleagues across the U.S. who are friends and colleagues, and I did have access to care and consultation. That I'm not everybody probably does, just because of where I am, but I did have to let go control, and I did. It took me a while, but
Mm-hmm.
to trust that other people were caring for me, and I did get to the place where I wasn't micromanaging every single decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly was a journey as a type A, little bit OCD, little bit control freak doctor,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
So for all of the women out there who have are either sitting in the patient seat, or perhaps may one day sit in the patient seat and need to refer back to this conversation to learn how to be the best patient, how to ask the best questions, and how to make the experience as palatable as possible. What are some of the things that you learned that you think we all need to know?
Yeah, so I have a long list, but I'm going to try to be succinct here. The first and foremost thing, and this is really part of Ms. Medicine and my what I call Ms. Med Ed, my consumer and physician education arm of Ms. Medicine, is that women should be educated and empowered, and really use knowledge to help you get the best care you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Women, this in general, are caretakers of others. They do, prioritize their families, health, parents, kids, spouse, friends.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets care ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
Women often will deprioritize. They're doing too many things, deprioritize their own healthcare at the expense of taking care of others. And I had another example this week of a patient who has now a diagnosis, and really hadn't been proactive enough about getting her care, really hadn't had enough contacts with healthcare providers, wasn't up to date on her screening tests, and just
Mm-hmm.
what I say to patients all the time is, if you never come to see me, I don't have the opportunity to kind of check in with you and really do what I'm supposed to do as your primary care provider, which is really help make sure that you're getting all the things taken care of that you are, right? And there's a
Mm-hmm.
list, and the list gets longer as women hit midlife and get older. And really that's my role as your primary care provider, right? but
Mm-hmm.
but women need to prioritize and make time to get their own health care, and that's the really first thing I would say. The other thing is, really, women should ask themselves, if their primary care provider is asking them all the questions and that they're getting all of the care that they should, right? So I use examples, which is, Is someone talking to you about your breast density and helping you understand whether or not you're at elevated risk of developing breast cancer? Has someone had a really good conversation with you about perimenopause and menopause and pros and cons of hormone therapy? And has anyone asked you about sexual health? And has anyone really talked to you about bone health? Has anyone talked to you about calcium intake and what you should be doing? Has anyone really talked to you about your 10-year cardiovascular risk and what you should be doing for that? And like, just
No.
really check in, because right, no,
Dr.
because
Lisa.
no, I know, because primary care,
Oh my
you can't
goodness.
do all that in 7-minute visits, and it's very hard to be a primary care doctor right now. And so it's this
Mm.
bad situation right now where primary care, it's hard to be a primary care doctor and do everything that you should be doing in 7 or 10 or 12-minute
Mm-hmm.
visits.
Mm-hmm.
And patients don't know the right questions to ask, and women in general don't advocate enough for themselves. And so I just encourage everyone to advocate for themselves and to make time to get good health care, because at 20 or 24, you maybe, life is long and you don't have the lens, you have no health issues, and it matters really less then. But for midlife women, as you get older, really it matters. And I just see it way too often that women aren't getting the health care they deserve. And so I
Mm-hmm.
encourage all women there. And then, if you get a diagnosis, ask lots of questions. Always take someone with you. So if you have a cancer diagnosis, I will tell you that was one of the best things. Here I am a doctor, but I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you that early diagnosis, you're not remembering what's happening in the visits. You're not remembering the details.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a friend with me every single visit with every single person I saw who was taking notes. And I mean, it's amazing. I, weeks later, would debate with one of my friends about what someone would say
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't remember it correctly, and they could go back and show me what they had written down and had taken notes, right? And so
Wow.
it just really
Mm-hmm.
use someone with you when you have a big diagnosis, because your memory, you'll be in shock. You won't be remembering it all. And then the other thing is really ask enough questions. Don't rush into making decisions without being completely informed. Never feel badly about getting a second opinion. I encourage my patients to get second opinions all the time. Healthcare right now is very, very specialist, fragmented. Sometimes the right hand and the left hand aren't talking or aren't really working in sync. It gets confusing for patients. So getting that second opinion is really, really important. And then the last piece of advice I would give would be never lose hope. Um, uh, really continue to be forward thinking. There always is hope. There are unintended, silver lining or unexpected gifts and silver linings. And again, I could tell you many of them that have come out of this journey for me. And I hope for anyone that's facing a diagnosis that you will feel the same way and experience it the same way, because there really are really gifts that come out of it. And don't lose hope, and rely on your friends and family, because they're just, it's an amazing, girlfriends are an amazing gift.
Mm-hmm. They really are. Isn't it interesting? So, and so you sit on both sides of the community as a patient, as a former patient, as an advocate, a patient advocate, and also an educator and a doctor. I think it's a remarkable lens for you to be able to offer optimal care. And I've never considered the idea that my doctors would perhaps have similar experiences. With my healthcare journey. I haven't had that experience, but I think that your lens is such a unique one because you understand as a patient, because you understand the sacrifice and some of the questions and the fears, you're able to be a much better doctor, and it gives you the strength you need to build your career even further, the last leg of your career, as you mentioned.
Well, thank you. I try,
Yeah.
try,
Yeah.
certainly.
It even probably gives you a more friendly, even a friendship lens for your patients. They probably see, and experience parts of you that you didn't even know maybe were available until this journey opened it up for you.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to though. It's an interesting. It's a it's a fine line sometimes, right? But for sure, I mean, right. I have amazing patients, and many of my patients have become my friends or were my friends and are my patients. But sometimes that makes it harder too, right? The emotional
Yeah.
overlay when you have a sick friend who's also a patient is hard as well. It is complicated.
Yeah, for
For
sure.
sure.
For sure. Wow. Oh my goodness, Dr. Lisa, I've learned a lot.
Well, thank you.
I feel
I
I've
hope it was
grown.
okay. Hope this
Oh,
was good.
it was so good. I've grown a lot. I really appreciate Healthy Women for curating these conversations, because I think these are the conversations that we need to viralize. These are the conversations we need to amplify more, to ensure that as women, we are protecting one another and we're covering one another, and we're advocating, overtly, covertly, that we're creating a presence where women feel safe enough to journey, however that looks. If you are a patient, or you're the friend of a patient, or you're the doctor, the understanding, the empathy is just essential for all of us. And so I'm really grateful that we're able to facilitate more of these conversations and bring a very human lens to the healthcare journey for women.
Thank you.
I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
you.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Lisa. Where can they find you on social media? If perhaps they want to, great girlfriends want to reach out, or
So, right, great. So, LisaLarkinMD.com is my website, or MsMedicine.com. And then, you would think I would know my social media handles. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and you would think I would know. I don't even know what
you don't know them, but they can look up Dr.
Dr.
Lisa
Larkin,
Larkin.
Dr. Larkin. Yeah, Dr. Larkin is my Instagram, and my Twitter. Oh, let's see. You would think I would know those things.
Well,
It's
you
at
know what?
Lisa Larkin MD.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay. Because I'm pretty sure if people want to leave you comments or drop you a note to say
Please,
kudos or thank you
yes.
for this message, and just follow Ms. MD and learn about the updates with your new startup journey. You have now made yourself available. So thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. Great girlfriends, did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast, into the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Great Girlfriends. You follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends, and on Twitter at _Great GFS. Last but not least, we'd like to thank my amazing husband, Kwaku, Sam and Dilly, and all of you for being a part of the global community that makes us so strong. Please remember to share with your friends. Keep listening and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil Amuti, and I'm out. Peace.